5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Live from East Whiteland Township. Welcome to the February 14th Valentine's show. If everyone would please stand and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Again, good evening. I'm Scott Lambert, Chairman, and I'd like to introduce everyone at this table. To my right is Vice Chairman Rich Orlow and Supervisor Peter Fixler. On my left is Solicitor Bernadette Kearney and Manager Steve Brown. For those, and there's a lot in attendance for the first time, I just want to point out a couple public meeting rules. Each speaker who has something to say, please come to the mic and provide your name and address so that everyone in Zoom can hear you as well. We'll try to limit those conversations for about 3 minutes. We are being Zoomed and taped tonight, so you'll be able to see this meeting at some later point. Starting off, I'll mention that executive sessions were held on January 25th at noontime for personnel, real estate, and legal issues, and also this afternoon on February 14th, in which legal, personnel, and real estate issues were discussed. First up, Catherine, if you can give us an update on our grant applications, which continue to be very fruitful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to announce that the Township has been awarded a TASA grant for the Sidley Mill Road Chester Valley Trail Connection project. We received $1.85 million, which I'll just note is one of the largest awards that's ever been given for this project.
Okay, and we're going to jump around a little bit. Greg, if you would like to step in and have your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the Board of Supervisors. On August 21st, 2023 at 10:48 p.m., fire and EMS units from the East Whiteland Township Department of Fire and Emergency Services were dispatched to a residence in the 500 block of Hollywell Drive in East Whiteland Township for a medical emergency. While responding, crews were advised that the patient at that location had gone unresponsive, was not breathing, and did not have a pulse. With that, the 911 call taker telecommunicator Samantha Stever from the Chester County Department of Emergency Services began providing CPR instructions over the phone to the patient's son, Shardul Jagtap. Shardul continued CPR under the direction of telecommunicator Stever for approximately 3 minutes until the arrival of Officer Sanford Moran from the East Whiteland Township Police Department, who continued CPR until the Department of Fire and Emergency Services arrived and began providing advanced measures. During their care, the patient regained pulses, began taking breaths on his own, and was transported to Paoli Hospital in critical condition. The patient underwent extensive care at both Paoli and Lankenau Hospital Medical Center, where he was admitted for several months. After extensive medical care and rehabilitation, the patient was able to be discharged from care and return home to his family. According to the American Heart Association, every year 350,000 people die from cardiac arrest in the United States. Immediate CPR can double or triple chances of survival after cardiac arrest. Thankfully, this proved true with the efforts provided by Shardul under the direction of Samantha. I am joined today by the patient, Mr. Jagtap, and his son Shardul, and the rest of their family. Additionally, joining us is telecommunicator Samantha Stever, the 911 call taker from the date of the incident. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors in East Whiteland Township and the Department of Fire and Emergency Services, I am pleased to present a life-saving award to both Samantha and Shardul for their efforts on August 21st 2023, which ultimately resulted in saving a life. So one thing I would also like to highlight, in addition to Officer Moran from the police department, the Department of Fire and Emergency Services crew was Captain Lauren Knapsinger, firefighter paramedic Paul Brown, and firefighter paramedic Raymond Stackhouse. So if I could at this time, can I have telecommunicators Samantha Stever come up, Gardul. Exceptional. CPR in any condition is hard to do, but to be able to voice it over the phone and get it done, this is something. So, thank you. Just want to get a couple, with your family, we'll take a couple pictures up here. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Greg, and everyone involved. Again, excellent job. Next, we will be going to jump to 2C, and Rich will give us a description of this award.
Not nearly as exciting and impressive as the prior one, admittedly. The township received an award on our financial presentation from the Government Finance Officers Association. Has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to East Whiteland Township for its annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended December 31, 2022. The report has been judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to the report.
Sure.
In addition to what you typically see if you look at financial statements, this is about an inch thick, and the benefit of a report like this, which we started 4 or 5 years ago, it includes a significant history of the financial picture of this township. You can go back, I think, 10 years and see an enormous amount of detail. If you want to, if you can't sleep at night, this is what you look at. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Once again, I'm going to move some things around, Greg. I'm going to pull you forward here, if you're okay, with 3B on your agenda. If you would care to ratify the appointments officially, if you can find the equipment.
Yes, thank you again. So we recently just had 2 open full-time vacancies within our department. So we went through an application process, and we selected 2 candidates to fill the full-time positions. Both of them are here this evening. The first one is firefighter paramedic Quentin Lotz. You want to come up? Firefighter medic Quentin Lotz comes to us full-time from Radnor Fire Company as a firefighter paramedic, a longtime volunteer here at the East Whiteland Volunteer Fire Association, previously serving as EMS captain. Tonight he has his longtime volunteer, his father Robert Lotz, his mother Suzette Lotz, and his grandfather Carl Lotz here in attendance. So if you come over, Quentin, I'd like to present you with your badge. Quentin has been assigned to the A platoon under the direction of Captain Knapsinger. Our second appointment is to firefighter EMT Kevin Hare. If you want to come on up, Kevin. Kevin is also local to the area. He's a volunteer with one of our mutual aid partners in Westchester Fire Department, and he comes to us with 6 years of service from the Arlington County Fire Department. So Kevin has been assigned to the C platoon under the direction of Captain Bechtel.
Why don't you gentlemen come forward? We're going to do some pictures.
One item I omitted because of the excitement from the prior presentation. I want to thank our Department of Finance, headed by Usha Hogan, who did an enormous amount of work to gather and put together this report, for which we received recognition.
Thank you.
I hope she's on Zoom.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
How soon can you get here for your award?
Oh, I start walking out there tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning? Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, sir.
Now we'll move back into hopefully following the program, which would bring us back to the Catherine talking about under 2D, a new township logo design.
Yeah, so if you want to put those up on the screen, we're going to share a few things with you. So for the last very long time, we've been working on redesigning the township's logo. And if you look around the township, you'll see all different color schemes, sometimes different logos. And so this initiative is to unify the approach to rebrand the township, essentially, and also bring all of our signage in line with a specific design. There'd be a new seal placed here. And also our website, as the board knows, is also under redesign right now. And so this would also be applied there. So it's a very large project from that standpoint. So there's been a committee working on this, and we have for the board this evening 2 of the finalists. So the one that you see on the screen is the first one. It's really all the same logo. If you focus in on the bottom right-hand corner, that's essentially what it would look like. And it's just meant here to show you different applications so that you can get a real feel of what it would actually look like. And then I'll just move to the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And so the second one, and I'm sorry, I should have said, of course, Gunkel Mill is shown prominently in the middle of that one. And so this one is a sort of dual rendering here of Gunkel Mill on the top. And what's nice about this one is it gives some sort of the bottom can be interpreted in the eye of the beholder, either fields or trails. This is all based on feedback that was solicited at some of the previous board meetings, just from those in the township, of what exemplifies East Whiteland Township from both a historical standpoint and also going forward. And then around the outside of both of the seals in that black band, it's hard to see in this, is it does have the slogan of the Heart of Great Valley around it. So that's represented in both of the seal designs. The color schemes that you see here are open to feedback. These are just the ones that are demonstrated here, so that we can get an idea of what of these designs is the board's preference, and we can work on refining color palettes in the next stage. So if you want to go back, we can talk about them individually, but that's the high level overview. So this is the first one here, and again, I said it has the band around the outside as well. This does currently have a burgundy, and that is navy, gray, and then there's a lighter blue tone to give you an idea. You can see the color palette in the top right-hand corner. So open to any feedback from the board at this time.
Since I've been on the committee, you know all my thoughts, but just generally I would say that while this is attractive, I think the color scheme on that one needs to be tweaked a little bit. It's an interesting design. It's simple, it's clean, but I'll leave comments to you guys going forward here.
Yeah, I like these designs much better than the earlier ones. I think it's much more appropriate to have our historic Gunkel Mill as the logo instead of other, not really relevant photos. I like it. I'll leave the color selection up to those who have better taste than I.
I like this version with the kind of stream running away from the mill. I'll leave the color selection up to the experts.
Any other feedback on number 1? All right, then I guess we can go to number 2 if you don't mind. So this is the option number 2. Any feedback from the board?
I remain a number 2 grand prize winner, but
I like number 1 better. That's my feedback. And is there any concern about the heart of Great Valley being a difficult screen printing transition due to the size of the font?
That's a great comment, and certainly something we can work on. We've looked at these in grayscale. We've looked at them large. We haven't seen a smaller printout than what you see here, but we may need to refine that a little more so that you could see it, because it's going to be copied, reprinted, small, large, and we want to make sure that it's legible.
Yeah, I'd hate to lose that. I do like the heart of the Great Valley.
and Peter and Rich, just so you know, I had Catherine blow up both of these two, and they're situated in the wall of her office. If you wanted to take a closer look at it, what it would look like on a larger scale.
In that case, I'll withhold breaking the tie until I look at that.
Okay.
And I told Rich that the heart of the Great Valley was added because he had requested that some time ago. No pressure. Sure. Do we have any public comments, thoughts? If you can come, no. You have to come to the mic, please. Or actually, can you get the mic back there? Sorry, I didn't realize you were on crutches.
I'm Diane Repen. I've lived in the township for 72 years, since I was born. And my only comment is, I love it because it looks rural, but I don't think you'll interpret it as that way by stopping houses being built further. Because I'm thinking that's a very rural indication and not something that you're going to have more houses. And if I was buying a new house, I'd think, oh, that community must be very rural, so they're not going to encourage a lot of houses to be developed. Unfortunately, that's not the case around here.
Don, anyone on Zoom? Okay.
So just from a timeline standpoint, I mentioned that the township website redesign is in progress, and we do have a timeline on that. So you'll probably see one more version of this with refined final colors next month, pending Rich's feedback too on that. So that next month we'd look for you to make a decision on it.
Catherine will have you continue with the 250th anniversary celebration information.
So you might remember last year you adopted the resolution to officially participate in the 250th anniversary of our country, which is coming up in 2-ish short years on July 4th, 2026. So this is just serving as a reminder that that's on the horizon, and also that you're probably going to see this appear more on the agenda going forward, because Larry, our new Park and Rec director, will be spearheading participation in the Chester County group on this, and we'll be starting to generate some ideas of how East Whiteland can participate in this. So if the board has any interest too, we'll probably look in the future for an ad hoc committee to be formed. So if you have any individuals in mind, or if any of you would like to be informed with that, just let myself or Larry know about it, and we'll get you plugged in on that.
Any questions, Donna, out there? No. Just wave if somebody comes on. Okay. Speaking of Larry, we can have you talk about our Eagle Scouts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board. I just want to give you a quick update with our Eagle Scout project. As you know, the township has a great relationship with the Eagle Scouts, and this continues to this day. Recently, Eagle Scout candidate Jay Tyson completed his project at Battle of the Clouds Park. This project included 6 new benches and 5 tree plantings. I took a walk over there myself. It was commendable work. All the installations were stellar, really great quality, and it really brings a humongous amount of quality and depth to the park around the trail leading to the Chester Valley Trail and Battle of the Clouds. So just want to give you a quick update. A huge thank you to Jay Tyson and our continued partnership with the Eagle Scouts. Thank you.
And for those that maybe not have been to many meetings here lately, Larry is our newest employee as being the Director of Parks and Recreation. Zach, I'll turn you over regarding an update on the zoning ordinance and our recent public event that we had.
Sure. Yeah, so we had a public workshop at the end of January. It was fairly well attended. We had a series of stations to discuss different topics from our comprehensive plan, from the Route 30 corridor study, some of the recommendations therein, and really trying to get feedback on whether some of those recommendations are still valid heading into, I'll say, the zoning ordinance rewrite process. And as part of that public outreach initiative, we also have an online survey that does some similar things, talks about some of the recommendations. There's also some, what the planners would call a visual preference survey. So which of these pictures do you like better, which will then help us draft regulations that sort of result in those types of developments, whether it's homes and sidewalks and things like that, or things within the corporate center. So that survey is live now. As of a day or so ago, there was 50 responses, which is pretty good for a 2-week period. And we'll be pushing out via our website and social media more as the weeks progress here. So please take the survey.
Okay. CubeSmart comments?
Here, I thought I'd get a little break. So this is a project that was approved a number of years ago and constructed. This is the office building at the corner of Old Lincoln, Old Lancaster, and Lancaster. The CubeSmart building is office. There's some internal storage space sort of accessory to the office use. And a number of years ago, the applicant approached the township about holding some of the parking from the approved land development plan in reserve until such a time that it was needed. In other words, when it shifted from partially storage to more office. They are now looking to consolidate some of their employees to this office. So there'll be renovating portions of the storage area into office. Therefore, more parking is required. So the sort of parking, if you're facing the building off to the left in the open lawn area, will now be constructed. We just wanted to, given the number of years that have passed and the interest in this project over the years, we just wanted to make sure that we made the board aware, made the public aware, and also asked whether the board would like us to send any sort of notification to surrounding property owners, just so, since it's kind of been quiet for a number of years.
It wouldn't hurt to notify them. I only have one comment though, if at all, unless it's absolutely necessary, it might be better to eliminate adding those perpendicular spaces to the adjacent property, because that is the one spot where, as cars pull in, although during the day they won't have their lights on, when they leave at night, the lights may shine on that property. So if they can, unless they absolutely need them, it'll save them money too. They'll probably like that part. Yeah.
So I know the applicant's legal counsel and engineer are here. I can certainly field that, or I can run that by them. There will be some landscaping, so there may be a landscaping solution that could be helpful as well, but I don't want to speak for them on the need or ability to kind of mitigate that issue. I don't know if you want to speak to that, or I can follow up with them after this meeting. Essentially the idea is that it's an approved plan. They're able to proceed with construction, but we wanted to make you aware.
I think this reverts all the way back to what, 2006?
Yeah, there is a plan from 2006, actually, not too long before we did our last zoning ordinance rewrite, and then some subsequent approvals for a slightly different office building, some approvals to hold this parking reserve originally. So yes, it's been around for a while.
Okay, and then plan would be to notify residents within close proximity of this change?
Yeah, I can get an update on the timing of construction from the applicant, and then maybe just a few weeks prior. I wouldn't want to send it out prematurely, but we can follow up with them about some of those comments that Rich just made and send something out closer to time.
We have a comment
Okay.
from Zoom. Go ahead, Barbara. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. Barbara Arnold, 31 Fonstock Road. Just two quick comments. One, I just hate to see that property go, because I walk with my dog over there, and it's a nice big area in our neighborhood to walk. My other comment and question, and maybe you can't answer it tonight, but just if there's any drainage problems with making that into impermeable space. That might have been addressed when this was approved years ago, but I just thought that might be a concern. Thank you.
I can speak just generically to that. When the plan was approved and constructed previously, all of the corresponding stormwater management was installed in that open lawn area. So there's actually, as I understand it, inlets and things like that, features that are already constructed within the lawn area. So all of the stormwater management's been constructed and was constructed to accommodate this new parking area.
Okay, that's good to know. But just lastly, I agree with Mr. Orlow. It'd be nice if they don't need it, that would be wonderful. So thank you.
Okay, Carol Rapp, go ahead, please.
Yes, Zach, hi, it's Carol Rapp. I just wanted clarification. So, we didn't realize this was going to be a Cube Smart, because the sign that was there by, I think, Eli Pond was a completely different building. So are you saying this parking was kind of pre-approved back with that original or with Cube Smart?
So this parking specifically was approved under the plan for the office building that CubeSmart ultimately occupied. So they were, I think, known to be the tenant, at least when the reserve parking situation was discussed. So yeah, this was approved all as part of the land development plan that resulted in the office building that's there now.
Okay, I just wanted, I wasn't, just wanted to make sure, because that had been advertised as something completely different for a long time, and then all of a sudden we got CubeSmart, so. Okay, thank you.
One thing to note for the people maybe listening that might not have been stated, I might have missed it, is that a concern way back when was that half the building is storage space. A lot of that storage, as I read, is going to be converted to office space now. I don't know if that was communicated.
Oh, yeah, I apologize if I didn't say that more clearly. Yeah, a portion
I
of
think that's something residents.
Yes, you're
would be
right. And I know
interested in
that was
hearing.
part of the concern originally. Yeah, so some of the space within the building that is occupied by storage units will now be office. So there will be a less storage and more office, therefore more employees, therefore a need for more parking.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is an update on open space program. And Catherine will provide us with a lot of details, but I would like to give a little bit of a overview or background on this. Since my initial time on the board back in 2018, open space has been an important and challenging topic, not only for me, but I know for my fellow supervisors, Rich and Peter, and former supervisor Sue Drummond. The challenges we faced back then continue and remain today. We have limited opportunities to acquire clean land. We have limited opportunities to see land. Well, unfortunately, we see more of land in need of environmental remediation. And that remediation carries a liability the township would potentially be forever on the hook for. We have concerns and challenges pertaining to funding, which I and Catherine will discuss further in the agenda and underneath board topics later. And the fourth challenge that I'd like to bring up is competing financially with developers. The Commonwealth Code only allows townships to purchase land at appraised values. For attractive property, developers typically will add margins and thus price us out of the sale. With that said, in 2019, the supervisors commissioned our Park and Rec Board to develop an open space plan to address some of these and other issues. With the help from Natural Lands and a number of recreation, engineering, and land development experts, and our resident task force of Tim Phelps, Kelly Weinberg, Chuck Barbiera, Sean Bowling, Joan Smallwood, and myself, in August of 2021, along with supervisors' help, we finished completing a comprehensive 168-page plan that outlines the action or the best plans that are contained in 9 chapters in this book. It talks about our current inventory of property. It talks about the goals and objectives. It talks about land use. It talks about a plan for open space, a plan for trails. I'll point out that we were just awarded the $1.9 million for completion of the Sidley-Chester Valley Trail connection, a park system and facilities assessments. We completed phase 1 of the Backton Hill Park a number of years ago, and we're currently improving ADA compliance in our parks and pre-planning phase 2 in Backton Hill Parks. We also have chapters that pertain to program and services. And as I mentioned earlier, we had just hired our first ever park director, who is young and energetic, because you are going to make him a very busy person going forward with his programs. Right, Larry? Good. And the final piece in the chapters pertain to financing. An update in terms of that is that I'll answer the question that's certainly will be raised and has been raised to the board, is the fact that we understood that the sewer sale, which is on hold, what impact is that going to have on us with our funding sources? It's on hold because there's currently a pending litigation that has made its way to the common pleas courts. So Catherine will talk about the different funding options that are available to us in just a short while. But I will add that acquiring open space remains an important topic, and this exciting opportunity that we're going to be talking about by this generous and thoughtful family is before us now. And time is of the essence to complete the transaction. We need to react appropriately, plan, and address any outstanding issues that there are. We need to seek all financial avenues to fund this transaction, including county and state grants. And I will add that I contacted Commissioner Maxwell about this project back in the middle of the summer. And within 24 hours, we had begun discussions with Chester County regarding grant assistance. So, Rich and Peter, I know you folks are very involved and are very pro open space. Any thoughts and comments that you'd like to add?
We hear consistently, we heard tonight a comment about the desire to limit slow development and try to preserve open space, and that is our intent with these actions. There's not much left. I know East Whiteland is, once the corporate center came in, this was years and years ago, little by little, there was more development. Our ability to literally stop development is basically non-existent. Once something is zoned, a person has the right to develop it. We can slow, we can restrict, we can shorten, or we can make it smaller. We can try, but it's not easy. So we will do what we can to try to preserve some of the open space that's left. East Whiteland, what I always say to people, East Whiteland has more known state roads running through it than any surrounding township, and that makes it partly a magnet to traffic and development in and of itself. The ease of accessibility to East Whiteland makes it so popular. 30, 29, the Turnpike, 202, 352. Swedesford is a state road too. Not any surrounding townships have that road network, and that's one of the things we're faced with.
Just to jump on what Rich and Scott said, our commitment is to limit the amount of development happening in the township and to really preserve what open space we have left, to keep what we have still for preservation and open space, and just keeping what we have away from urban blight. And hopefully the actions in the coming months will lend itself to that, and it'll eventually be in front of all of you to decide the value of that.
And just to clarify, when I said time is of the essence on this opportunity and this generous family, I'm talking about the folks, the Schiffler family and their estate in terms of the property. Catherine, would you like to pick it up with the funding source?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. To that end, township staff have been working with Natural Lands, as you mentioned, on what will ultimately culminate in hopefully an open space referendum on the ballot in November. So I'm just going to walk through a brief update of where we're at and some milestones that are going to be coming up in the next 2 to 3 months, so the board's aware and the public's aware of what to expect next. So currently, you mentioned in the PROS plan, which has been updated, there's an open space opportunities map. It's very recent, but is being revisited just to make sure that we fully understand what the most available land opportunities are. So that's aspirational in nature. There's going to be a honing in on what's potentially before the township in the shorter term. And so one of those properties that you'll see is the Schiffer property in the southwest corner of the township, and likely some others. So you could expect to see some revised version of that map coming up sometime in the next few months. In addition to that, in the next few months, the requirement in adopting or considering an open space tax is that the Board of Supervisors has to set forth the referendum language for the ballot. And there's a leeway time of 13 weeks before the general election for that to be in. And so in order to meet those timeframes, we're targeting a May public hearing for that ordinance, which will set forward, in addition to the referendum language, it will also require that an open space review board, or sometimes called an open space committee, would be formed by the Board of Supervisors immediately following the passage of that referendum, should it be successful. There would be another ordinance required after the fact that would set forward more specific things, including review criteria for that board. That is not the purpose of this ordinance. It's just to stipulate that an open space review committee will be formed. And so those details would be worked out at a later time and are not the subject of this. Some things that will also be very helpful and are worth mentioning right now is the finances of this proposition will be evaluated and shared with the board and the public so they can get an understanding of what the cost might be for this program. And that has to be laid against what the potential opportunities are. So there's a lot of evaluation going on of those things, but you could expect over the next 2 to 4 months that information will be made available, and it'll be presented to both the board and the public in a way that everyone can easily understand. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the public that are here? Okay. Donna, nothing online? Okay. And I assume that any of that information will be placed on our website as well?
Yes, it'll all be public.
Okay, very good. So we're excited about this. We hope that we can successfully pull off something that has been a challenge, again, as I said, for quite some time.
Tammy O'Sullivan over at 7 College View Drive. So my question is, I understand that the property's under, is across 4 different townships. So how, can you help me understand how the townships are going to partner together to help with this, preserving the space? Thank you.
I think later on the agenda, there's a term sheet that we were working with the Westchester Foundation, who now owns the property, that East Whiteland would purchase the property in the 2 other townships. I was West Whiteland and East Goshen. The township is looking to purchase that portion of the property.
Let me just add that those townships are aware of our intent, which is to hopefully move ahead and purchase properties in their townships, and their staff and elected officials understand that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Moving on, we've got an update pertaining to Valley Creek cleanup.
We just want to announce tonight that Trout Unlimited is currently organizing their annual Valley Creek cleanup. The date is set for April 6th, and all the information's on our website if you'd like to volunteer. They do this every year. Some years they have a lot of turnout and help. They're always looking for more help. And they normally operate out of Valley Creek Park. But if you contact them, they will be glad to take your help.
And John, on behalf of the board, and God knows, I don't know, 7 or 8 emails that I have received, we want to thank you and your staff for a great job this past day and a half of plowing our 7 inches of snow that we received here. I'm sure a lot of your guys kind of forgot what a snow plow looked like.
Yes, there was.
So it's even impressive that they were as
Well, thank you.
doing such a good
Yeah,
job as
we
they
haven't
did.
had much practice lately,
You know,
but
no,
we're getting
for sure.
back into it. So
But really, please make sure you let them know.
I will.
A
Thank
lot of positive comments.
you very much.
I think we only had one item not get knocked down.
A couple mailboxes
Couple
didn't do too
mailboxes,
well,
just
but
one.
we'll take care of that.
All right, but hey, well worth it. Yep.
So we actually have a question from Zoom about the property that just came in. Susan, do you want to unmute yourself, please?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Susan Bunn, and I live at 3 Red Barn Lane. So I'm sorry, I may have missed this, but is the township interested in buying all of the property, even though it's in 2 different other townships?
The answer is yes.
Yes. And let me just ask this question. Does the township have something in mind in which they want to do with the property if they're able to purchase it?
I think conceptually we have some ideas, and we refer back to our open space plan book and all the information. But specific details at this point in time, I think we're not there yet at this point in time. But the intent is to have it remain open space.
Okay.
Despite a few comments on Facebook, we're not going to put 30 houses on it.
Okay, I super appreciate that, and I appreciate the township's planning to try to, to acquire that land. It's super important, and I just want to thank everybody who's working really hard to do that.
Okay. We okay, Donna?
Yep, we're okay now.
Okay. James, can you come forward and we can try to get we're gonna change things around again, and we're gonna move to where we
It is,
number 5, public hearings. We're jumping to number 5.
thank you. So I'm going to open a public hearing, and this is a sewer ordinance that we're amending. We're considering an adoption of an ordinance amending the East Whiteland Township Code, Chapter 154, sewers and sewage disposal, to amend Section 154-17, duty to connect to public sewer. There will be a new section, exemption to mandatory connection, which sets forth criteria for owners to request an exemption for mandatory connection to public sewer, sets forth the establishment and maintenance of a list of on-lot disposal systems and requirements to be met for on-lot disposal systems and when connection must be made. It sets forth requirements for the sale, transfer, or conveyance of properties that are exempted from mandatory connection, and sets forth the requirement of connection within 15 years, sets forth requirements as to cost and fees, and sets forth the exemptions provisions shall not apply to certain properties. So I'm going to mark B1 as the ordinance considered for adoption, B2, the legal notice of the hearing, B3, the February 1st, 2024 email with letter and enclosed proposed ordinance and legal notice of hearing to the Daily Local News, B4, the February 1st, 2024 email with letter and enclosed attested ordinance sent to the Chester County Law Library, and B5, the proof of publication of the ordinance. this is something that, if you have any questions, you could ask myself or Catherine. We put together the ordinance in reference to this. I don't know if the board had any.
I certainly have no questions.
Same. I have no questions. I think it builds in the right protection for those who already have working systems, perhaps have installed it not or fairly recently. It wouldn't be fair to make them connect after spending a good amount of money to put a working system in their yard already.
I agree. I think the change ordinance puts reasonable limitations on existing septic systems.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Sure.
My name's Craig Ryle. I live at 94 Sproul Road, and we have an on-site septic system. And I'd like to get a copy of that ordinance. I tried to find that ordinance online, and it was not available.
I think it's on the front of the.
We can certainly send you a copy of the ordinance.
Yeah, because we're in a situation where we've got what you would, I don't know if you'd call it a failed system, but it's like, it could be a public issue. If we can't tie into the there's a sewer connection maybe 100 yards away. We'd like to connect, otherwise we have to get pumped every month. It's an issue. And I know that there are other properties in our neighborhood that are in the similar situations, specifically our next door neighbor. And those kinds of issues that create public nuisance, so to speak, in a failing. We're interested in tying into the system, and I think there's been a lot of dragging of feet in reference to it. I don't know, and so we finding out what the options are, what the real options are.
Yeah, if you wanna leave your contact information, we can talk to you about that. Yep.
That would be very important. That involves, resale of property.
Do you want to come write down your contact information? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I would close the public hearing and go back to the public meeting and ask for a vote.
We're reconvening into the regular meeting. Would you like to make a motion, Rich?
Sure. Make a motion to approve ordinance 358, 2024, our amendments to the duty to connect to public sewers.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And passes.
Thank you. Thank you. Tell your wife thank you.
So we're reverting from number 5, and we are moving to the number 3, board motions and resolutions. One of the most dynamic and underworked elected auditors that I've ever come across is about to resign, I believe, his post. Oh, and you're overpaid, by the way. Would you like to comment on your resignation at this point in time?
Already, as far as being overpaid, I don't agree. Now, last meeting, I submitted the written resignation as elected auditor. For those who are here, you cannot serve as 2 elected positions in the township. So I caved in and resigned as auditor.
Yeah, why don't you make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the resignation of the elected auditor from Rich Orla.
I second that. And
All in favor?
all in
Aye.
favor? Aye. All right, you can't, so. Steve Brown, I guess we were going to give us a summary of our 2023 annual report.
Thank you, Scott. When I became manager at the beginning of 2023, one of the things I wanted to do was prepare an annual report. And Scott, you were of a like mind, and you prepared a document last year. So we built upon that, and I had all the departments provide reports of their activities and accomplishments throughout the year. And there's quite a bit that goes on in East Whiteland Township. We're not a huge township, but we're not small. We have a staff of close to 70 people, and we get a lot done, which as staff, sometimes you forget, and sometimes as an elected official or maybe even a resident, things seem to move at a snail's pace, and they do, but we do get a lot done. And so this report is still in a draft form. I welcome comments, in particular from the board. There may be items you want to highlight or things I missed. And so I'd like you to let me know. I'm not going to go over all of this. It's actually longer than I intended it to be. It ended up being about 8.5 pages long. And we'll improve this report as we move forward into the future. In other words, the 2024 report will not just be a Word document, we'll format it differently. But I organized it by, I'll say, activities and not so much by departments. So I'm going to be real fast. Under the community development and capital projects, we, and this is something I'm very proud of the board doing and staff being a part of, was we awarded $265,000 to local human service agencies in our ARPA funds mini grant program. And again, I'm very proud of us accomplishing that. A project we have continued to work on are improvements into Route 30 corridor. Our planning focus is going to be shifting from corridor wide to more of an intersection focused approach, but that's something we continue to work on. The Route 29 and 30 traffic island was beautified this past year with drought and salt resistant and I think heat resistant plants. I'm not sure they're alive, actually. No, I'm kidding, Scott.
Better be alive.
No, there's plant. You got to get the right plant for a harsh environment like that. Next broad category is grants. This township is very active in seeking grants. We have a total of 22 grants either we've received or we're actively pursuing. Just in the last few years, we've brought in almost $7 million in grant funding to help us with needed capital improvements, and that's, I think, pretty impressive. I don't know of other townships around us that are as active or successful. We had a number of grants awarded last year. We had money from the DCNR for Backton Hill Park Phase 2, and we received 2 multi-modal transportation fund grants, one from PennDOT and one from what's called the Commonwealth Finance Authority for Route 30, and they total almost $1.8 million. We had a number of community health, safety, and well-being initiatives. We installed AEDs in 3 parks. The Fire and Emergency Services Department initiated a new life safety inspection program. The Police Department made continued efforts to increase their community outreach with the community policing program, largely through Officer Warfel, not exclusively through her, but a lot through her. They continue to work with our partners on safety walkthroughs and tabletop exercises. That's on top of already all the busy things that they do. They were extremely instrumental in dismantling a human trafficking organization that it was operating in the township, and they assisted with 2 habitually missing persons juveniles this past year, as well as we found time to assist in the 2-week search for escaped murderer Danilo Calcavante. Park and Rec, as we've heard this evening, we've hired our new and first time Park and Rec Director, Larry Accio. Backton Hill Park, which was 20 plus years in the making, was finally completed and opened. You heard earlier about our open space preservation efforts. You also heard earlier about one of our Eagle Scout projects. We had 2 completed last year. Trails and sidewalks were very active. Scott mentioned one, trying to bring a trail down Sidley and Mill Roads to connect to the Chester Valley Trail. And we've started to have partnerships with community organizations such as the GVCO, who's they're a great organization in the community, and both they and we want to partner and do more things for the community. You've also heard that we are doing ADA feasibility studies and plans for our parks that need these accessibility improvements. While we have a lot of popular programs, summer camp, our concert series, movie night, national night out, we had our first trunk or treat last year, and we're doing even more this year. And we continue to make improvements in our parks. Public Works was extremely busy. We had 11 streets paved, or portions of 11 streets last year, totaling over 2 miles of roads. We either addressed or are beginning to address stormwater management flooding issues on Spring Road, Warren Road, Ravine Road. Not to mention, you probably hear us talk about on occasion a program called the MS4 program, where we have to comply with federal and state requirements to clean the streams, even though we weren't the ones who contaminated or polluted the streams. It's our job to clean them. Just my 2 cents. And we are actively designing improvements, and we will be implementing those improvements. Also, we own all the signals in the township. You may not realize that. Even though they're on state roads, we own them and we maintain them. We have 2 traffic signal projects to improve efficiency and move traffic along better and more safely along 29 and 401. Some internal actions. We are trying to improve our communications. We launched a Facebook page, and we're actively working with a consultant to improve our website. We added some online services. You can now reserve our park facilities online. No longer do we use a pencil and paper. So that's very efficient for everyone. And certain payments can be made for codes and fire permits online as well. And you heard about the township logo. That's been a project that had been stalled. There's a lot of staff training and organizational development that goes on. I'm not even going to get into any of that. Emergency services, you saw that we hired 2 of our part-timers to full-time. Last year, there were a number of promotions and additional part-time hires. We are actively engaged in a study with both Charlestown Township and Malvern Borough regarding fire and EMS services in our communities. The police, Again, you've heard a lot about them this evening, or a little bit about them, actually. They're very, very busy and do a great job. There were 5 promotions last year, 4 to sergeant and 1 to lieutenant. Excuse me, then there's more internal reporting I won't bore you with. Planning and zoning and historic preservation. Zach mentioned our comprehensive zoning ordinance update that's underway. That's a big task, and it's also a long time coming. There's other sidewalk and trail projects that Zach and Brittany work on. You saw this evening with the logo. You saw the Gunkel Mill. Excuse me, the Historical Commission completed phase 1 of their accessibility project at Gunkel Mill this past year. And there was a sign dedication ceremony at Ebenezer AME Church and Cemetery on Backton Hill Road. You heard a little bit about finance this evening too, with the award from GFOA. And again, there were some very important upgrades and updates done in finance that I just won't get into. So that's moving very quickly, and it took longer than I intended, but that gives you a flavor for what goes on and what's accomplished in a year's time.
When we commissioned this last year, it was enlightening, and I think it's helpful to see internally what is being done. It's also most important for you folks to see what your staff is doing and how we're improving this community. And I think this is a great way. What might be helpful is what we did last year is really try to do a bullet point for the residents.
Yeah.
And high level it. I know that report goes into a lot of details, and Zach, you helped me a lot last year with it. You're not only a zoning expert, but you're a bullet man. So bullet man, whatever that is, but maybe you can help put that together. But I think we will push that out to you folks and put it on different websites and Facebook pages so you can take a look at it and have flavors for what is being accomplished here in the township. It's impressive. Peter, Rich, any comments?
I know it especially highlights how much it does get done during the year when you review the annual report.
Yeah. Don, any comments out there? Okay. All right. I guess, Steve, you're still up with our good friends at Delta Consultants.
Right, Delta Development Group has been on board. I guess this would be their 3rd year. Their agreement with us is up, and they're asking us to renew it for a period of 12 months beginning March 1st. It's the same payments as before, and again, they've been the group that has really been instrumental in helping us bring in all these grant funds. So I would recommend that we sign up for another year with them.
We originally hired Delta to assist us in a very short order to put together the $24 million grant application for the RAISE project for Route 30 a couple of years ago, and they've taken over that. And again, I've worked with them quite a bit, and they do a great job. Maggie at Delta and Catherine worked really close together in putting together these and identifying these potential grants. And I wholeheartedly would like to make a recommendation that we extend the contract with Delta for another 12 months. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, I'm not sure we got a second, but I second that.
Aye.
And it passes.
All right, one more from me, then I'm going to turn it over to Catherine. But This one is the school district purchased 100 Lindenwood Drive, which is where their new administrative offices are located. They've moved off of Church Road, and actually they're at 100 Lindenwood. I'll leave it at that. The district is tax exempt. They received a tax bill, and they're asking us to exonerate them, which is, in other words, relieve them from the duty to pay the taxes. So that's the request of the district before the board for action.
And I think in every other aspect that they've been involved with, they're a tax exempt organization. So this is just kind of procedurally something we have to do, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, even if we didn't do this, they're tax exempt, period, right? Okay, all right,
Heck with it.
all right, that's fine. Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the request for tax exoneration for school district for Lindenwood Drive.
And
I'll
a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And it passes. Okay, Catherine, I turn this over to you now to talk about more information on the Schiffler situation, property.
I'm gonna punt the first part. I think F and G could almost be combined into a two-parter because they're tied to each other. So if Bernadette can explain the term sheet, and then I'll take over explaining what the resolution's for.
Yeah, we were provided with a non-binding term sheet for the Schiffer property, and as indicated, it's those three parcels that we were talking about in East Whiteland, West Whiteland, and I always get this wrong, East Goshen. This is from the Westchester University Foundation, and again, Rich, you may have had a question. One of the terms of this non-binding agreement is that the township intends to go out and obtain grants to purchase the property. So I can make that clear that in the actual agreement of sale that we can terminate if we're unable to obtain those grants. And the grants that we're talking about is what's in G, the Chester County Preservation Partnership Grant application. So if the concern is the board, I will make sure that the agreement of sale can be terminated if we're unable to obtain those grants. At the option of the township, at that time you may decide if we didn't get the grant, but something else came along and somebody gave you money to buy it or something, that you would have that opportunity to move forward with it, but you have the right to terminate if the grant money is not obtained.
I think that's prudent at this point in time. Allows us to go forward, protects us, and we keep pursuing grant money.
So I think we would just ask for a motion from the board to authorize the township manager to execute that with those changes as discussed this evening.
Rich, you want to make a motion?
Any other questions?
Can you please repeat what you, it's hard to hear her back here.
Oh.
And I didn't get the whole gist of what she said towards the end.
On the term sheet, we can add language. It's a non-binding term sheet. We haven't entered into the agreement of sale yet. We can add language that indicates that the intent is to get grants to pay for the purchase of the properties. And I can add language to the agreement and to this term sheet that says if we're unable to get the grants, that the Board of Supervisors has the right to terminate the agreement at their option. Yeah.
Yeah, in light of the uncertainty regarding the sewer sale that's working through the courts, this is definitely the prudent thing to do, is to have a contingency for grant money. It's a lot of property, decent sized dollars. So with those contingencies added, I'll make a motion to approve entering into the non-binding term sheet.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And passes.
All right, so on that note, and same property, what you have before you is a resolution for application to Chester County's Preservation Partnership Grant Program that was just referenced. This is for the township to apply for funds for acquisition of the Schiffer property or the WCU Foundation property. And this is a 50% grant match program. What I'll mention is the township also intends to apply for a DCNR grant for the same property. So there's going to be a resolution probably on your next month's agenda, which would have the matching funds for this. So the hope is that there'd be a 50% match required, but we could utilize those funds from the DCNR grant program.
Great. Peter, would you like to make a motion? Yes. To any, out in the audience, the question was, is that for all 51 acres? And again, the answer is yes, it is.
Any other questions? Okay. I'd like to make, sorry.
Carl Sherrod, 22 Anthony Drive. I have several questions. Is there a timeline when this has to be done? If we're able to raise the funds for the sale?
Well, the grants will have time frames in them, but for the agreement of sale, it is likely to be, I believe it's going to be November with a 6-month extension into 2025.
And is there any interest in the other two townships helping to purchase this property?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is that an option?
The short answer is no.
No?
They're not interested. They're fine if we go ahead with it, but I've spoken to their managers and they communicate with their elected officials and they're not interested.
And you had mentioned earlier about how you get outbid by developers. Is that a possibility here?
It's always a possibility.
Okay, so it's not up to you, it'll be up to Westchester Foundation then, whether they accept our proposal.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It would be up to Westchester Foundation then to accept either the developer or the township's proposal.
Correct. They're the owners of the property at this point. The intent is they're not going to negotiate with someone else if we enter into an agreement with them.
And the last question is to supplement the grant applications or the money that we hopefully would get from the grants. Is it possible for the surrounding people to set up a fund to contribute to that?
Which people do you speak of? The
Well,
neighbors?
I'm sure that a lot of the neighbors that surround that property would like to see it the way it is. And even, not necessarily directly abutting the property, but some of the, like, that Shannon townhouse down there, some of the people in that Waterloo development, thinking the development and I live would be interested, and probably some of the others in the surrounding area. All it's going to bring is more traffic, more congestion. Right now, Moorstein Road is a fairly nice road to walk down. I know a lot of people use it for walks. So that's the question is would that be an option if needed to supplement it?
So earlier this evening, what you heard the board discuss was this is part of a larger open space initiative of the township. And so as part of that, there is the exploration right now of a dedicated funding stream for that through an open space tax.
Right, I know you're going to have the tax.
So that would be the dedicated funding stream for open space preservation, which could include this property if needed.
So then to rephrase the question, if people wanted to contribute to this fund, the open space fund, be an option?
I think so.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know that unless we absolutely did not need it.
Right,
if
but I
there
think if you let
was-
us know, I think there's some motivation by people that would be willing.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't imagine My vote would be yes.
Okay, I figured that, but I had asked the question. Thank you.
I'm sure there's some way our solicitor can figure out how to accept those funds. Okay, take your time.
Diane Reapin from Morstein Road. Is the 51 acres, does that include that piece that's between 202 and Shannon Village? That overgrown piece that's back there? There's just a strip back there that was segregated apart from Schiffer's property when they built that other development. And I don't know whether that's included as part of it or not.
It is not.
It's not?
No.
Okay. The other question was, you mentioned if the funding did not go through, or if they had something happened with the, that there was a possibility of a realtor or somebody or a developer. Whatever happened to Mrs. Margaret Schiffer, who was the original owner of the property? She had a trust set up that the land is never to be built on. Now you're dealing with Nancy Schiffer, who donated it to Westchester University, who has no blood relation to the Schiffer family. But Margaret Schiffer, her mother-in-law, said that it's never to be developed. It's in a trust forever. So what happened to that?
So the Schiffer family also owned several other parcels that were not within.
Well, wait a minute, you have to stop there. It's only Nancy Schiffer because she divorced her two sons.
Sure, okay.
So it's Nancy.
Nancy owned other property that was outside of this boundary that was sold to a developer. And so that it was always the intent in the township's conversations with Nancy that, and I appreciate that history because it seems to us that she is bringing forth that legacy and wanting to see it preserved as open space. Right. She was very, very emphatic that it would not be sold to a developer.
Because Margaret and Herbert were emphatic about that.
Yes, and that's what's been communicated to the township as well.
Yeah, okay.
My name is Frank Reapin. I live at 1522 Morstein Road. We have 4 acres surrounded on 3 sides by Schiffer property. Our property is probably the one that's going to be the most impacted by whatever happens. A couple things I got on my mind. First of all, I was a bit disappointed in the township that nobody made us aware of what's happening considering our location to the property. I found out about it about a week and a half ago when I'm sitting in our family room and all of a sudden this group of men show up on our deck and start surveying our land. And I asked them what they were doing, and they told they were surveying the land that was donated to the University Foundation by the Schiffer family. I said, well, this is not Schiffer property. This is our property. And they said, no, you are incorrect. We have a copy of the map from the county, and your 4 acres is not carved out in the plan. So we got on the phone and we got that straightened out. But that's how we found out that this was all going on a week ago. Why didn't the township at least send a note out, hey, this is what's going on with the property surrounding you. Again, we're a horseshoe around the Schiffer property. And the surveyor was kind enough to supply us with a copy of the final survey, and there are 3 parcels in the survey that surround our property. We were told, and again, I don't remember whether it was from the surveyor or speaking to the Westchester University Foundation, that the township was looking into purchasing the property for a park. And again, here we go, we're living right in the middle of it, nothing from you guys to give us a heads up. If it wasn't for the mistake of the surveyor showing up on our property, we wouldn't even have known about this. And I'm a little disappointed in that. My wife, who just spoke here, she and her family have lived on Morstein Road for 75 years. As my mother-in-law used to say, they lived there when the only people that used Morstein were the manure spreader and the mailman. Morstein Road now has become a freeway. The speed on Morstein Road is just unbelievable. We have no sidewalks on Morstein. All our mailboxes are up on the street. I have to use a scooter to get up to the mailbox to get our mail. Our driveway is about 600 feet long. You go out there on Morstein Road, you take your life in your hands. Is there any plans in with the development of the land that will help with the traffic situation on Morstein? Everybody forgets about that little corner of the township up there. Our house was built in 1744, the house that we live in. And we're just concerned. If the township were to make a park or open land for people in the township to use, what would the township work with us in doing a buffer between our property lines and the land in question? I'm concerned. We have friends that live down on the trail, and they talk to us about people that walk the trail, bring their dogs, and the dogs come up into their property and do their business and leave. People come up and picnic on the back lawns of the people that live on the trail. I don't want that happening up by me. And again, and Scott, you've been a big help to me, and I appreciate that when we spoke earlier. But more and more concerns come up. The other big question is, what happens to our property value? When you do it surrounded with a park, does your property value go up or does it go down? So these are all concerns that we have. And again, I was a bit disappointed in the township in not taking a more proactive stance and at least giving us a heads up rather than finding everything out just about a week before.
Frank, I understand your questions. My understanding why you were not notified, and correct me if I'm not accurate, but my understanding was the relation. We were a third party up until we're still a third party. We're still a third party. We're a fourth party. We're not involved with this yet. Okay, and the two parties were in discussion and wanted things to be private and not to announce it. I think there's probably some concern that some outside forces could be potentially impacting what could happen. So we were asked not to really comment or publicize anything at this point in time.
Okay.
Up until now, we followed that request, and we're at the point now that where we're having to bring to the public these documentations to the public and let everyone know what's going on. So going forward, publicity, you'll be in the loop.
Okay.
I've got your email. You're in trouble now.
The other thing is, the surveyors were kind enough to, when I called them, walk around and show us the property line. As I said, we've been neighbors with the Schiffers for my wife's family for 75 years, and a lot of the property line has disappeared on one side and increased on the other side. Originally, Mr. Schiffer, old Mr. Schiffer, surveyed the property and they put up their markers. Lady that left my wife the house that we live in right next door at 1522 didn't like that and had her surveyor come and survey the property, and their markers are still there from when they did it. We just had this group come in, their survey lines are different than the other two. So it's not by a matter, but it's just it gets, when you get my age, it gets to be a bother. You know, what's going to happen with your house and everything else. So, and again, I can't thank you enough for your response to me. It was so rapid and so positive. So thanks again.
You're very welcome. I will also say that at this point in time, we don't own the property yet. It's conceptual. And I think if we end up acquiring and getting together, we will take into account any considerations that you have in terms of privacy and concerns, including traffic and any
Okay.
order along that line.
Thanks again.
Okay?
Good evening, David Spiker, 7 College View. Just 2 quick questions. We've talked about the intention of the township, but has Westchester University Foundation shared their position or their intent for the land? And secondly, you mentioned, I'm not on Facebook, but you mentioned Facebook 30 parcels. I've actually heard 30 parcels a couple of different times. And any idea where that came from, or are they looking at this having been divided into 30 parcels already? Thank you.
I can't speculate where stuff shows up on Facebook and how it gets there. No idea, but I would say it's debunked in terms of 30 parcels.
Well, I do think there is some of this property, the Schiffer Zone, is being sold to a developer. Maybe it's that?
Maybe it's other parcels that we are not
We're not
part of that may have been in that conversation, perhaps. That would make some sense. And then the first question, Westchester.
I don't really want to comment on their
Yeah.
intent.
Yeah.
But because we're not representing them. We're obviously, I'm the solicitor for the township. So, but we're entering into a term sheet with them, and we hope to enter into an agreement of sale with them.
Frank, you've got another question?
Yeah, can I speak from back here?
Yeah, Donna, can we get the mic?
Should the township, my dear, happy Valentine's Day. Should the township purchase the property? Is the property put in any type of a trust so that it wouldn't be developed? And the reason that I ask that is that the property next to us, which is now cut down, which is 1510 Morstein. Yeah. When the people moved out, and they had been there a long, long time, their house and the acreage with it was put in a trust. 13 acres were put into a trust. Somebody bought the house with the trust, and then with legal help, the trust was broken, and there are currently 1, 2, 3 houses that have been built on what they call Red Barn Lane right now, which another house will be built also. So what happens to a trust? That's our concern. That's our concern too.
So the township's intent here is to take it one step further than a trust, and we'll be using a mechanism called a deed restriction. And so because of the funding mechanism, so the township is pursuing, it's a requirement of those grant programs. And also, if the open space tax funds are used for it, it has to be used on open space land. So there will probably be more than one deed restriction on this property that will forever require the township to maintain the property for open space and recreation purposes only. Yep.
Donna, why don't you just check one more time on online Zoom? Okay. Rich, you want to make a motion on the resolution?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, okay, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 17-2024, which is to pursue a Chester County Preservation Partnership Grant application.
A second?
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And aye, and it passes. Good.
That was a good discussion on that. I like that.
No, that was a good discussion, good questions. I think it answered a lot of questions, I hope. A lot of unknowns. And again, this is the first time that we're bringing it to your attention, and we'll continue to push out information as we go forward each month. What's that? Yes, stay tuned. Next, a vacancy occurred on the Malvern Library position, and we have an applicant, Bill Holmes, who applied for that position, which is a 3-year term, and I think he'd be a good candidate for that. Any questions, comments? Donna, any public comments on Bill Holmes being appointed?
I think he'll be a great addition to the library board.
Agreed.
All right. Would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept William Holmes for a 3-year term to the Malvern Public Library.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And passes. Catherine, are you or Steve talking about anything specific about the Malley advertisement?
The second-class township code requires that whenever the township is going to utilize a professional CPA firm to conduct the annual audit, that you have to advertise it in advance before the audit's completed. And so that's exactly what this is. This will be in place of the elected auditors, will be the professional CPA firm of Malley.
All right. My understanding is that this would be added to the January 2nd reorg meeting going forward.
right.
So we won't see this again in the midterm. So, Rich, would you like to make a motion to advertise?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to ratify the advertisement to appoint the CPA firm of Malley LLP to perform the 2023 fiscal year audit of the township accounts.
Peter?
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and passes. Moving on to number 6. And planning and development. Zach?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first item here, 6A, is a consideration to authorize the staff and solicitor prepare a resolution for following developments being LD 09-2023 for the CCIU Child and Career Development Center at 40 Moores Road. They are requesting consideration of a conditional preliminary/final approval based on the current plan set. I guess just a little status update. We issued review letters a few weeks back, and the applicant actually revised and resubmitted in response to those review letters just today. So a fresh set of response letters. I don't want to speak for the applicant if they'd like to sort of go through the quick dog and pony show, but I'll just kick it over to Joe Riper.
Thank you, Mr. Barner. Good evening, everyone. As Zach was starting to say, today the CCIU resubmitted plans addressing outstanding issues from both the Conservation District and from the Township. Most of the comments were, in relative terms, minor, and I should say that the land development process has gone rather smoothly since we completed the conditional use hearings with last fall. Where things are now is that we expect the township will probably be able to issue us a clean review letter before the next board meeting. We'd like to think that the Conservation District would do the same, but realistically, we don't think that will happen. And as a result, we're asking to be put on the agenda for the next board meeting. And because the issues themselves are very minor, there's been no impact on the stormwater plan as far as the Conservation District is concerned. We think that it's not a big deal to give us conditional final land development approval subject to getting that clearance letter. But that's the request.
We're just debating here one moment because it did come in today. I did not review it, and just talking with the board members.
I mean, we have one choice. We can authorize the preparation of a resolution pending the receipt of acceptable, or your acceptable review of what just came in today to avoid delaying another month.
Yeah, and Al, I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, but the last review letter I saw of yours was pretty clean.
It was good.
Yeah.
The one thing hopefully I wasn't unclear. We're asking to be put on the agenda for action at your next board meeting next month. And the assumption would be that we'd have clean letter from the township.
And that action at the next board meeting would be issuing the resolution or authorizing the preparation of the resolution. We have a two-step thing here. You know, it's kind of like a dance.
I'm asking tonight to authorize the resolution for the next board meeting.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
Okay, in that way, I have time and we have time and Al has time to review in the event that something needs to be changed.
Correct.
With that clarifies my concern.
I'd just like to chime in briefly. So obviously we've been trying to, as sort of a point of emphasis, trying to get as clean a review letter, kind of limit the conditional approvals. I would just say, just generally speaking, based on the status of the reviews and some of the comments and response, I think there's a pretty low risk on this one relative to like ripple effects through the plan resulting from changes. So generally speaking, I think staff, consultants, and speaking with the four of them prior to the meeting, I think we're okay. What I would say, just kind of to put on your radar, there'll be a number of conditions that are contained in the resolution. One that I'd kind of like your insights on now, if you're willing to speak on it, is one that would require, prior to recording the plan, all of the comments being satisfied, and prior to initiating construction, that all third-party permits are received and that the plan is recorded.
I think the second is legal requirement, but I'm just going to talk to Joe Lubitsky for 1 second.
Sure. We'll have a couple others for the board's sake that reflect some of the discussions from the conditional use process, most of which they've already demonstrated compliance with, and a number of others. There's a couple of items with respect to, for example, the sidewalk along the Moores Road frontage. They requested to defer construction of that because there's not really anything to connect it to at the moment, which I think is supported by staff and our consultants. So we would have language like we've done in the past. It'll look very similar to others. But I did just want to make those 2 points just while
I'm
we're
not
at it.
aware of any conditions that I wouldn't be comfortable saying yes to that. I mean, I'm assuming that I'll be speaking with Ms. Kearney between now and the next meeting. But I think both of your comments are acceptable.
Sorry. What was the first?
Some of the language in the sort of the template that we build from, it doesn't necessarily require some of these things. We often, as just part of our process, doesn't necessarily require that they occur prior to recording. I think we'd like to, like going forward, clean that up. But it seemed, in speaking with Barry, that they would probably not be objectionable. But I'd just like to clean up some of the language relative to what must be done prior to recording.
Yeah, what did you say? I didn't hear.
Just that all third-party permits
All
and
third-party
review letters and things like that, which we've talked about in the past. But then also just that those items are finalized prior to construction.
If there's anything that I think needs special attention under item 1, I'll discuss it with Bernadette. I don't think there are any, and the reason for this, so that the board is aware, the reason that we're asking for this relief is that we are scheduled to close on the purchase of the property after your next board meeting. It would make the school authority more comfortable if we knew we had final approval, even though it was conditional. So, thank you. You did act on that, right? Or do you have a motion to?
No, they didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we need a motion.
Make it.
I think should authorize the solicitor to prepare the resolution for the conditional preliminary final land development. For the conditional preliminary and final land development approval?
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the solicitor to direct a resolution for the final development of LD-09-02 2023 for the CCIU at 40 Moores Road. Condition of final approval? Conditional preliminary / final land development.
Second?
Second. I don't know.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, I'll say it again. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys.
Shall I proceed?
Yep. Why don't you hit the next bullet, man?
So, 6B, we have 2 extensions here. The first is an extension of time until April 30th to consider the final plan for the Bishop 2 redevelopment. That would carry them through the upcoming Planning Commission meeting and the subsequent 2 Board of Supervisors meetings. Second is for an extension of the preliminary plan consideration for Green Figs, the data center proposed on Sweetsford Road, until May 8th, which would carry it through another cycle of Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors meetings.
Any questions? I think we have a question.
Hi, Joan Smallwood, Yukon Township. It is actually, I'm going to tie it with the pros discussion earlier. One thing is you mentioned redoing the pros map. Do you anticipate properties coming off of the current pros map in that revision? Specifically the Bishop 2 property, because I did notice, Scott, that you said there was the lack of clean properties. I did catch that little caveat there. So, can you comment on that at all?
It could.
There's no intention at this time for us to reopen the pros plan and amend those maps. What we are talking about tonight is just sort of honing in on what might be the properties that are most likely to come up as being available to the township in the nearer term.
Okay. And then just one other quick comment. As you heard the other night, it seems that the developer, I did hear your comment too about, your concern, and I share those concerns about the township being liable with contaminated ground. But it seems like the developer was able to secure some legal protections for himself. And so I would just feel like those kind of protections would be available to the township as well if they were to pursue them.
Well, part of his protection is he's part of an aggregate cash lot of $8 million to remediate the Bishop 2 property. Okay.
Well, that's true. That's
know,
a good point, yeah.
And again, just to reiterate, when I'm saying clean versus contaminated, there's issues when it's clean because the developers suddenly have a keen interest on it and will try to outbid us. And the second piece is the contaminated pieces that are more readily available perhaps, but they bring issues and concern and liability that we have to watch out for going forward. So again, as I said, there are challenges. So,
Well, as long as we can keep it, as long as we're still working toward keeping it at least on the map and at least as a potential, that's helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Joan.
All right, we have a couple questions. Carol Rapp, go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. I wanted to comment again. Every time it comes up, one of us is going to comment on the Bishop Tube, the approval that you have set up to make a decision in April. I just want to ask that you decide no in April, and we can just put an end to this extension. So that is my request, and many of my neighbors as well. So I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb Mobile, go ahead, please.
Hi, Deb Mobile, 42 Village Way. Yes, reiterating what Carol has already said, but I have a question. It seems that you are determined not to say no. I know you're not in approval of it. The funny phrase, just say no, came up, and I know you don't agree with that strategy. Why are we only postponing the decision for a month when in fact we're not going to have a clear vision of what the state is doing and whether they're going to build those? They talked about a certain type of filtration pond and things that would definitely affect the approval of any plan. So why are we not postponing like way down the road on this? Like for you to have to do this work, to request this approval, to go through all the business, to have the lawyers review it, to have us stand up and bother the other constituents in your district. This is all a tremendous amount of time. So why not postpone it until the state has a clearer vision of what needs to be done to that property?
I'm going to have our legal experts,
You're one.
Zach and Bernadette, kind of answer that for you.
So once the applicant files a land development plan under the municipality's planning code, there's time clocks that have to be met. And so time extensions are often granted because of the timing of review periods by the township consultants and things like that. The township and the developer have to act in good faith. Both sides have to act in good faith in proceeding with land development. So it's not unusual, and you'll see that there were other time extensions on here for other projects as you're going through something like this. The applicant decided to file it. These are certainly questions we will certainly ask the applicant why they are looking for an approval. And again, we may get another extension. They may agree with our reasoning saying, why aren't we waiting till DEP comes out with what they're going to do? So these are questions that will come up at the Planning Commission meeting and at the Board of Supervisors, but we have to proceed under the time clocks under the MPC and proceed in good faith on both sides.
If we don't, it's deemed to be accepted. Is that correct?
Yeah, the MPC is a little harsh on what happens if the township doesn't follow the timelines. Yes.
Okay.
Zach, do you have any thoughts?
My only comment was really just that this current extension allows the process to play out how it normally does, with an attendance to the Planning Commission, 2 to the board if needed. And some of this was to allow the public meeting last week to occur, which we felt was important to give at least the best picture of the current status of the project as we could. So that's really the intent of this specific condition, but I do understand your point,
Yeah,
and also your Nancy Reagan reference.
If I could just comment, this is anything but a normal proceeding. Not all the other developers and extensions that are going on in this township involve the level of toxicity that that property does. Not all the other developers and projects in this township involve the DEP. You know, somebody just, somebody bring some rationality to this. Because this is all, this chicken and mouse game is just, it's ludicrous. And it's a horrific waste of the taxpayers' money, which once again is only, you know, saying to me, if O'Neill and Company does not agree to a lengthy extension, it only says to me that, again, they do not have the best interest of East Whiteland Township at heart. You know, they really don't care. And thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Donna?
No, that's it.
All right. Anything else to add, Zach? No. Well, can we put together a motion for extension here?
Sure. Make a motion. We were authorized, the applicant, specifically Bishop Tube, extended our decision date until April 30, and that's all we can act on at the moment. So make a motion to accept the extension, the time within which we have to render a decision on the Bishop Tube redevelopment until April 30, 2024, and the time within which we have to render a decision on Green Fig Data Center preliminary plan until May 8th, 2024.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And passes. Three-ton road?
Sure. So next two are these are final releases of financial security. The first is for project on 3-ton road, just lot 3, sort of next to the Closet by Design building. They previously posted a cash escrow when that plan was to be recorded. We have drafted an amended land development agreement that allowed that original cash to be released to the original developer, and a new land development agreement drafted with the current developer just to replace some remaining landscaping and things like that this coming spring. So with that, really just an authorization to release those funds subject to this amended agreement.
Pretty straightforward. Any questions? All right, Rich, you're up.
Make a motion to authorize the final release of financial security for 73-ton road. $50,034 and 701 cents.
That's right.
That's what it's typed.
That is what it says.
It's a typo, I'm sure.
Every penny they want.
Yeah. Would that make
Every
it
penny.
$41?
701 cents. That's what it says.
If you would not mind authorizing just the higher amount, just to be sure, I can clarify that in the release letter.
$50,035. How's that?
For a price not to exceed, right? Thank you. Sorry for that.
I have a second.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and passes.
Looks like we had at least.
We have a question all of a sudden. Martin, you want to go ahead, please?
No, missed it.
Hi, I was really raising my hand for public comment. I'm sorry, I raised it too soon.
It's okay. Go ahead. I mean,
No, we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. Okay. Next would be on Uptown Worthington.
Same thing, a final release of escrow, obviously for a larger amount here. This is for the phase of Uptown Worthington that includes the Nemours Pediatric Medical Center there, which popped up out of the ground next to the apartment building. So they've completed all the site work. We were just waiting on the as-built plans, so they're good to go as well.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, Peter, please.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the final release of the financial security for Uptown Worthington Phase 4A for a total of $636,126.41.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And it passes. Next is a process that we began some time ago for an informal presentation of potential development to be discussed in the public forum by the developers. And so I'll turn it over to you to quarterback.
Sure. I'll resist temptation to make a Super Bowl joke. I just want to give just a quick, I guess, introduction to the extent that I can for Andy Hicks. He's got a property at 52 Swedesford Road. I think Andy would just like to present, based on some of the challenges he's seen with this property and the office market in general, and some concept plans he's pulled together to get the board's feedback on potential redevelopment of that site. So with that, Andy, I can certainly bring up anything you'd like to display on the screens.
Go ahead and bring it up. We'll roll through. Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for having me. My name is Andy Hicks. I'm the owner and president of Tri-Point Properties. We're a small real estate development company located in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. We specialize in the acquisition, redevelopment, repurposing of existing properties in and around the Philadelphia area. Go to the next one. In 2020, a group of local investors that Tri-Point organized and led acquired 52 East Swedesford Road, which is a 135,000 square foot, 3-story office building. We bought it with the intention of making significant capital improvements, leasing it up as office. Over the past 3.5 years, we've ran into 3 significant problems. One is right after we purchased the property, the adjacent apartments, Arlo Apartments, that development was completed. And as part of that development, the egress and ingress to the property is shared. And it became a problem with some of our potential tenants that they would have to drive through an apartment complex to get to the office building. The second one was COVID-19. It was a huge one. When COVID-19 hit and the state closed everything down, our existing tenants used that time to kind of shift to a work from home. And in doing so, as their leases started to expire, they downsized and retreated to properties they owned. For example, we had SEI in the building. They retreated to Collegeville where they owned a property. We had Mainline Health in the building. They downsized and retreated to property that they owned, and so forth. We currently have a vacant building, and one of the challenges that we've run into, the third challenge, is it's a fantastic building for larger tenants. Each floor plate is 45,000 square feet, which means that any tenant less than 15,000 square feet becomes a challenge to accommodate. So we're typically in the market looking for tenants that are 25,000 square feet and bigger. And right now, over the last few years and for the foreseeable future, that doesn't look like that there's that many of them. The tenants that we have spoken to, that we have tried to lease the property, are existing tenants in the Great Valley Corporate Center, and we would just be poaching a tenant from another building that would be looking to downsize and come to our building. Go to the next one. So here's a aerial view of 52 East Swedesford, as well as the Arlo Apartments. In 2017, East Whiteland Township approved a zoning overlay for what was then a 20-acre property. And that overlay allowed for the subdivision of the properties to be basically 10 acres each. Arlo Apartments were built. And if you look at the blue lines, that's how you get in and out of the property. And the only traffic light is at the top right of the image. And as you can see, if you have to use the traffic light, you have to drive behind Arlo Apartments and then through it to get to the building. Right there, right. So again, when we brought tenants to the building and spoke to them about leasing it, their concern is that their employees would have to drive through an apartment complex to get to the office building. And that was the other part of, between COVID-19 and that issue, we have a 135,000 square foot vacant building. Over the last 12 months, we've been working with the township to try to come up with ideas. Want to roll the next? Let's see. Oh, is that okay? That's fine. So I just wanted to kind of give out some big picture numbers of East Whiteland, Great Valley Corporate Center office market. So it doesn't show it here, but if you include Class A, B, and C properties in that submarket, you have just over 4.2 million square feet of office space, which is a tremendously huge number for that kind of a concentrated area. If you look at Class
Andy,
A,
can I just clarify?
Yeah.
Class C, what is that?
It's typically like, would be like owner, user. It might be something that's mechanical in nature, or kind of like the lower quality. In some of the middle sections of Great Valley, there's a couple buildings that are used. It could be like, it's usually considered outdated, obsolete type property that an owner user might use for a very specific low-end type use. Okay, so I've only put Class A and Class B up here because that typically determines the health of any particular submarket from a occupancy standpoint, from a rental rate standpoint. So if you look at those two, there's almost 3.9 million square feet of space. And these numbers are accurate as of December 2023. Class A, back then, we had almost 26% vacancy. Class B, we had over 32% vacancy. For those 48 buildings, a little over 28% vacancy. With the trend as leases that were signed before 2020 roll, the likelihood is that the existing tenant will downsize and either stay in place or relocate. So those numbers probably will continue to go up somewhat while some of these older leases come to term. So if you look at 52 East Swedesford, we make up 5.5% of the Class A office space in that submarket. And we are 21.2% of the vacancy in the Class A submarket. If we're proposing a plan, basically selective pruning, but if we were to remove 52 East Swedesford from the submarket, the vacancy would drop down to 21.6%. It's an example of possibly looking at unique properties in the submarket that have barriers to full occupancy for whatever reason, and the selective elimination of those properties and allowing them to redevelop into some other use, thereby reducing the supply of office space in the submarket, thereby increasing the demand and hopefully bringing the office market more into balance to protect the overall health of the submarket long term. So the problem with this kind of vacancy is that every office building in the submarket is going to try to appeal their taxes because of a perceived loss in value, which in most cases is real. And then that'll put a tremendous amount of pressure on township, school system. We've taken a look at this over the last 12 to 18 months. We don't see the office leasing market coming back anywhere near was before in the foreseeable future. We think that, and this is what we're being told by CB Richard Ellis, Cushman & Wakefield, Newmark, the top brokers in the market, that at the end of the day, and this is nationwide as well, but there's probably about 20 to 25% of office space in this submarket that will become obsolete and will never get leased up. So with that in mind, we obviously don't want to own a vacant office building. It's not good for anybody. So we've been working with township staff since July or August. We've met with them 5 times in different work sessions to try to go through this issue and to talk about potential plans that are both financially viable and potentially acceptable to the township instead of a vacant office building. So over those 6, 8, 9 months, we've put together 6 different plans, but the one we like the most is what we call option 1. Go ahead and scroll 1. Okay. So here's a colored site plan of option 1. And what it is a low density mixed use plan that we feel is very compatible with the adjacent Arlo apartments. And it's comprised of 11,000 square feet of first floor retail in building A, 215 apartments in 4 buildings which surround a pool and common area. Each of the buildings is only 4 stories. So this is a very garden style type feel apartment building. There's 215 units, 75% of them are 1 bedroom, 25% of them are 2 bedroom. There's no 3 bedrooms being proposed. And then in the rear of the property, we're proposing a self-storage building that could either be 2 or 3 stories, roughly 22,000 square feet per floor. And the thinking here is that we're starting to see an emerging trend where new apartment development is being developed alongside with self-storage, because people that live in apartments or downsize into apartments typically need self-storage, and having it so close and convenient is just one more way where each of these 3 uses helps each other long-term to be successful. Want to go one more? So here's an overlay of what the property would look like with this development. And there's a lot of benefits to this plan. One of the biggest and most obvious when we laid this out is that there's significantly less impervious coverage with the redevelopment plan compared to the property as it is now. Because the property right now is building and 665 parking spaces. So of that 10 acres, a lot of it is asphalt. In this plan, with these smaller buildings spread out, there'd be a significant more open space, green space, landscaping, and because of where the property is and how it sits and the size of the building, especially with building A only being 3 stories, anybody driving by on Swedesford would not really see much of the buildings to begin with. And obviously on the other side of the property is Route 202, and really wouldn't see much of the property at all. Also, in doing this, we believe that we would be reducing the amount of car traffic to and from the property, because when the building was occupied, we had somewhere between 500 and 600 tenants in the building, and at least 500 to 600 trips each day back and forth. In this plan, we expect there'd probably be somewhere between 250, 300 people that would be living there. And again, we feel like it would be very compatible with the Arlo apartments next to it. So when we put this plan together, we, like I said, worked with borough staff, or excuse me, township staff. We listened to what their comments were, their concerns, and that's why we went with a low-density approach. Everything's on-grade parking, a lot of landscaping, greenery, perimeter walking trail, those kind of things. So we have other options that we explored, but we feel that this one is probably the best, would be create a win-win situation. So we're hoping that Township would give consideration to this plan and hopefully allow us to move forward.
Andy, one question I've got is, would any of the buildings B, C, or D, could they be allocated for attained age purpose?
For what, which purpose?
Attained age over 55?
It's possible. The one thing that we don't see in this plan, or we haven't accommodated for, would be the extra amenities, services that typically come along with over 55. If you look at the over 55 buildings that are being built now, they're very large, and they have everything from a general store, doctor's office, movie theater, restaurant. So I mean, you're talking a totally different approach to.
That's what I need.
Yeah. So we didn't factor that in.
The building A you label as retail and office space.
It should just be retail and apartments.
Okay, that was the question.
That was one of the updated slides.
Yeah, okay. Then how many apartment units would be in that building? And that, whatever number that is, that's included in the 215?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that building A, the way it's designed, the first floor would be 11,000 square feet of retail space.
Right.
And we envision a small restaurant and then specialty service type tenants. Mm-hmm. And then the 2 floors above it would be apartments.
Oh, just 3-story.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that building right there would just be 3-story. And the reason is because we would make that first floor probably 14 to 16 feet tall, just to give those retail tenants the ability to have higher ceilings and, make it look, especially for a restaurant or, other type uses. And then to do that, we'd only feel comfortable putting 2 stories above it.
Sure. Think there's even a retail need? I mean, I don't have a problem with the option 1. I don't know that you need retail, or the risk with retail, like if you kept the office building office, you would take tenants from other office buildings and just go back and forth. It might be the same with retail space. The Grove is not fully leased yet. I don't think it's been a couple of years. So Route 30 is doing better, but it's still, vacancies there. So
Sure.
I don't know that you would be able to fill it.
So that's funny you say that, because in one of our work sessions, that's what I said to borough staff, and they said, well, maybe you could look at it, since it's smaller, 11,000 square feet, the individual units would be 1,200, 1,400 square feet, make it so an individual could start a business, as compared to the Grove, where the spaces are much larger, 5,000, 6,000, 8,000 square feet. So we did take a look at it, and I did ask, because we own other properties in Chester County, some of my retail tenants at other properties, if they would be interested in having another location in Malvern. And I got a very strong yes on it from a couple prospects. So because of that, we incorporated that in to try to add a third use in the property. And with the Arlo apartments and with our apartments, the 400 or so, 500 or so people, we think we can put the right number of tenants in where it's actually an amenity for all the people that live there, and give them something that they can walk to. For example, a small restaurant for breakfast and lunch. and then some of the other tenants that we talked to. So we're actually a proponent of that now.
I mean, I'd rather see something like this than have a perpetually empty building. And it would mean, clearly, the building would be demolished and you'd start over.
Right, which again was another interesting point, because when we first started thinking about it, our core business for the last 23 years is taking existing structures and redeveloping them, repurposing them. So the first thing we did is we went through the exercise of how do we convert this building into apartments, and we did that. It did not lay out well at all, and we ended up going to knock it down and rebuild from scratch.
In the square footage slide that you showed, did you include in either Class A or B the lab type space that's over at Great Valley Parkway? Or did you just include pure clean office space? Do you know?
I believe this was put together by CB Richard Ellis on my request. I believe they just put in office space, but I'm not positive.
I know of another 100% empty building not very far from here, and that's a big one. It's two next to each other, so there are pros and cons and pluses and minuses to this. I don't see the office market realistically coming back. We're, even with a couple empty office buildings, we're a lot better off than I hear Tradifferent has millions and millions of square feet of office, and those tenants, those building owners are going in and getting their real estate taxes reassessed, and they rely on that over there. Fortunately, we're more relying on the earned income tax, so don't want you to lower your taxes, but it wouldn't kill us.
No, actually, the plan that we just proposed would probably create a greater value than that full office building.
Have you spoken with any of the employers in the township in terms of the needs that they may have for housing for their employees?
Right. Yes, we actually have. One of the comments we got is except for the senior executives, it's very hard for people that work in the Great Valley Corporate Center to actually live in East Whiteland Township. And we didn't do a survey, but the feeling we kind of got was most of the employees that work in Great Valley Corporate Center commute from other townships where they can afford to live. Their thought is that if there was more affordable housing, meaning like apartment rentals, and not having to buy a house nearby the corporate center, it might give them a better chance of recruiting younger workers who, one, are not interested in owning a home, who couldn't afford a home in the township. So we have heard that. And obviously, more supply of apartments, more competition for rents, and potentially stabilized or lower rents.
To compare notes, I've also had that discussion with Vanguard, and I'm hearing it from them as well. Another question that is kind of part and parcel to the apartments is, what can you do to create some affordable apartment and housing for the younger people throughout the 4 buildings?
I don't really know how to answer that question tonight. I mean, we would certainly, the way we've designed the property in the sense that everything is built on grade, right then and there allows us to lower the cost basis for construction. I mean, we're going to be as competitive as possible. We'll be right next to Arlo. But we didn't go into it thinking that we were going to be subsidized or anything like that. We designed it as I'll call it a market rate apartment, but at the same time, our history with TriPoint with our apartments is, we put out a very good quality apartment, and we're not the most expensive. Try to deliver value, but I don't know if that really answers your question.
Right. Would you consider, and if it were a deal killer, to try to look at some type of affordable housing, spending $2,000 for a one-bedroom apartment is pretty challenging for a lot of people.
I agree. And really, it comes down to supply and demand. If the demand's there, then the prices are going to just keep going up. So the hope would be is that by adding another 215 units, it helps create more supply, and landlords have to become a little bit more competitive with their pricing.
To answer my question, I guess a yes or no, would you consider looking at trying to do some affordable housing?
I certainly would. I mean, look, any plan that we would go ahead and build would need to be financially viable. But of course, I'm open to suggestions.
And I know that's a difficult question. It is handled by and challenged in terms of how to arrange that. But anyway, I think it's something to look at.
Having had this presented to me before, I think this plan makes the most sense with the already established Arlo apartments on the site and the future building not going to be in use. I mean, what else really can you put on that property besides additional apartments? And it fits that niche of the corporate center, which is a niche part of the corporate center with those apartments in it. So to add additional apartments, I think makes the most sense in this small portion of the corporate center.
It's right at 202. Even if people aren't working in East Whiteland, if they are working in East Whiteland, they're going to make a left and a right, and they'll be at work, or a right and just circle around the Vanguard, and they'll be at work. And if they're not working in East Whiteland, odds are they'll get on 202. So I doubt this would have an impact on Route 30 much, that's what we hear about, Route 30. Yeah, right. I think it's a beautiful road, but what amenities? What amenities? There's a pool, I see.
Yes, we have a a clubhouse and pool.
Right.
And then we'd have normal amenities like mailroom and a gym, and then outdoor open space, walking trail. And then as we design it further, if this is the path that we're looking at taking, then we'll really look at what other amenities we can, put into this.
Sure. Okay. Right.
I'm assuming we're missing the dog park.
I mean, it's not on the drawing, but it's like I said, if we get the
You have that many apartments, boy.
Hey,
I'd have a dog park if I were you.
We can put a dog park in there.
Well, that green right in the lower right-hand corner.
It ain't green after a month.
What is the process with this? Does this have the same overlay as Arlo?
It does. Yeah, without getting too deep into like sort of this little zoning puzzle we have, there is an existing overlay that allows mixed use. The Arlo apartments kind of satisfied, I guess, or took up the mixed use, like the residential component of that mixed use, and this office was to be the commercial component.
Right.
So if the board was open to it, one way to allow a project like this to move forward would be to amend that overlay to maybe change some of the thresholds for the mix of residential and commercial. So if the board is receptive to this, we could potentially amend that ordinance to modify some of those provisions.
Sure.
Likely we would probably, I'll say, sprinkle in some other details like we've done in other ordinances recently to like kind of enhance some of the architectural requirements and not to make it too onerous, but to give the board some review of that maybe through the conditional use process, so I haven't spoken with them about any of this, but that is certainly probably the easiest mechanism for all involved. is to amend the
Is
ordinance.
this currently the only area of the corporate center that has this overlay?
So I'd have to check the exact boundaries, but I believe it's the Arlo Apartments, this property, and then the Great Valley, the Penn State Great Valley parcels on the other side of the ramp.
Okay, well, that's not going to be converted to a.
I wouldn't think so, but we could look into some ways that we could
Sure,
maybe limit how expansive this could be,
Sure,
or at least
okay.
this component of it.
Okay.
Andy, as you're here, and just to maybe answer just some general questions, could you quickly just give a comment or two on the other options, pluses and minuses, and in terms of why you're thinking option one is better? Like, this is option two looks good if you're doing this, but
Sure. I mean, do you have those? Okay. So option two is just all apartments, no retail, no self-storage. And that's actually where we started from. And it was 225 units, 5 buildings, and it very similar. But we been working with the township. They were like, maybe add a few more mixed uses since it's a mixed use zone. So we kind of took that to heart, and we, got rid of one of the buildings, and we put self-storage in, and we added some retail. And then while we were doing all this, we looked at option 3, which was sort of a hybrid, but it was heavy on the apartments. This is probably one that not a big fan favorite. It's got 1s, 2s, and 3s, and the 3 bedrooms are. You have option 3. Yeah, there we go. So this one has retail on the first floor. We actually looked at maybe some small office above the retail, and then we put 181 and 2-bedroom apartments in a U shape, and then 25 townhomes that would be for rent, and those townhomes were 3 bedrooms. So that brought the count up to 205 units, but there was 25 3-bedroom townhomes for rental. And then option 4, this is 100 townhomes. This could be for sale or for rent. Again, we were just exploring what this 10 acres in this geometry could handle. These are 3-story townhomes, 3-bedroom, 3-bath, actually 3.5 bath, 1-car garage. Very nice, but again, you're probably looking at $700,000-800,000 based on East Whiteland Township prices. And then option 5 was again a townhouse. These are 77 townhomes. These are only 2 stories, but they're wider and deeper. These would be something more geared towards, could be geared towards 55, but again, could be rent, could be for lease. And then option 6 was something very early on we messed around with. And option 6 was an industrial building. When we went through this exercise, we looked at all the major categories, retail. We looked at, could we redo office? That didn't make sense. The geometry of the property and how it situates with Sweetsford Road, it doesn't work for a lot of retail. Plus, with Grove having larger tenants, we just thought that there was too much there. We looked at other uses as well, and when it came down to it, we thought option 1 made the most sense. It has 3 different uses, minimizes the number of apartments. Each use kind of helps the other, and it works with Arlo next door.
yeah, that's help, and then to see those other options. It's one of those situations, we've sat and we've discussed in the sub-planning meetings, all these different options, but, and I think you've heard me say this before, I think the pluses and the minuses, as I look at this, just looking at this point in time, is I like the townhouse option because it provides a structure and ownership for somebody. It also eliminates what we hear a lot of transient, in and out, come in and then leave. The townhouse provides more of a community aspect long-term. But then the negative on it is that typically the townhouse is going to be 3-bedroom, and therefore you're going to end up having an additional load on the school system.
Right.
So it's that's just some of the thoughts that I see as I look at this, and I don't envy you in your position, trying to create something. I do appreciate the many options that you ended up putting together for us to kind of look at and talk about and review. That's helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you. Townhouses look nice and people, if it's for sale, buy and live there for a while, but there's no question. Townhouses, the way they're built these days, are single-family homes, and they bring every other one is going to have 1 or 2 kids.
Yep.
And that's all we hear is too many kids. So I'm okay with option 1. If the next step would be for you to look at the ordinance and tweak the percentages or coverage, whatever you do.
So what a senior, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in here, I'm just thinking, senior citizen townhomes?
We looked at that. We actually had another option with what some 55 and over communities. We struggled to actually get enough units to make it financially viable and to have the amenities available that, 55, like 20 years ago, you could build townhomes and say 55 and over. And the expectation was it's nice. It's mostly, there's a bedroom on the first floor, and that was good enough. Today, you can't do that. You need to have a whole list of amenities to compete with other 55 and over communities. And this property, again, it's a long, narrow rectangle, 10 acres. It doesn't really lay out that well for that use. We got 42 carriage homes, which basically share one wall. And that's just not enough to make it financially viable.
And there are developments that are being in the planning stages, much larger, 55, not within walking distance, but within a 5-minute drive. West Whiteland on the other side of Malvern Hunt, that whole stretch, McKee Group is working on that entire acreage as a huge, full of amenities, pools, everything. That would be huge competition for this.
What township?
West Whiteland.
Mm.
But it's right next to East Whiteland.
Just I guess a question for the board. So Rich, as you said, probably that if the board is open to potentially opening that ordinance, we can work with Andy and his council to make some tweaks, put it back and, put something that the board consider. I guess just one quick clarifier for me, is the board's preference this option 1 with like a storage and a retail component, or is an all residential component? Is that also an option? I'm just curious how many tweaks we're making.
Was my preference.
Option 1.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm neutral at the moment. I want to hear comments from residents as far as before I throw my 2 cents in. And I think we should all listen to what the residents are thinking, but and then kind of move in that direction.
Okay. Well, we can get in touch with Andy and Ron, and we'll work on a draft for you guys to consider. And we'll get a little update on maybe like a game plan going forward on the ordinance.
Great. Thank you very much.
Andy, thank you.
None.
Okay. Any comments on that subject? No. All right. Sure, come on in.
Carl Scherer again, 22 Anthony Drive. I like the fact that you think that Plan 1 here puts less strain on the school district. The other tax, everybody else is going to pay more taxes with all that additional burden on the school district. It seems like a reasonable use for this property. I don't know these people. I have no interest in helping them other than my selfish interest about the school district. Thank you.
Sure. Moving on to John Matea and the zoning and the code enforcement updates.
For the month of February, there will be no zoning hearing board meeting once again. We have no pending applications for any activity. On code enforcement updates, recently we've had multiple motor vehicles removed from private properties with the cooperation of the neighbors and voluntary compliance after being given warnings. So we see a good uptick in compliance on those matters after getting complaints from other neighbors. You're reminded that the property maintenance code requires that all vehicles stored on a property be street legal with current inspection and registration and not be in any state of disrepair or disassembly. On updates on some ongoing matters, Pioneer Gas Station last couple of weeks has done some rough paving there. You see continuation of restoration. Actually spoke to the owner on Friday, and she advised most of the finishing touches will be weather dependent on the contractors, and she hoped to be up in a couple weeks. Another one, I know, Mr. Chairman, you got some inquiries, and the township got some inquiries on the some uses along Route 30. One such use on 30 that we looked at and talked to the owners was at the Friendly's lot. They signed a lease with a Rafferty Subaru recently. I got to speak to the owners, advised them that use of that property as a parking lot was for primary use was not permitted, and they're going to be working on getting that to comply and get that get that situation rectified.
Does that mean getting the cars out of there?
Good. Thank you. And thanks for taking care of Friendlies quickly. I think tonight we're gonna skip the public comment. Is that okay, Martin?
Sure,
He
why
just
not?
raised his hand. Go ahead, Martin.
All right, Marty, come on board. Public comment,
Good
please.
evening. Yeah, I have a question. Subsequent to the public hearing this evening on the amendment to the zoning code for private sewage facilities, I read the ordinance, the amendment, as well as the underlying chapter. And I have a question. At last month's public hearing on this matter, I asked a very specific question as to how this amendment would impact large property owners. And I was told at the time that, well, if your sewage facility and home are set back more than, I believe you said, 150 feet from the road, you're exempt. Now, my question is, where is that exemption anywhere in what I read in terms of the underlying chapter or the amendment this evening?
Are you, so we hear your question, are you asking where in the ordinance it stipulates the footage requirement? Is that what you just asked?
For large properties, but I was told that for large properties, the amendment would not impact them if the sewage facility and home set back more than 150 feet from the property line or road.
I'll have to look that up, which I can do, and I can try to reference it here. But just to clarify, what the ordinance before the board is amending is just the section on exemptions. It didn't, you won't see referenced in the text that the board had this evening any reference to the 150 feet because it's not being amended at all. It was just the exemption criteria.
Would it be possible for you to send me whatever that underlying reference is?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yep.
Don, anyone else? Anyone from the audience? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll fire out A through G. If any questions, pause me. Raise your hands. Approve the meeting minutes from January 10th, 2024. Ratify the payment of the bills for January 31 of 2024 for the amount of $467,085.88. Accept the treasurer's report as of December 2023. Tongue-tied. Ratify the sale of the Dodge pickup truck from Public Works in the amount of $14,200. Ratify the appraisal for the Schiffler property for William Wood in the amount of $3,750. Partially approve the Aero proposal for 2024 MS4 services for general compliance and ordinance revision assistance not to exceed $51,000. Approve Chester Valley proposal for partial existing conditions and plans for Bryn Aaron for $3,500. Approve the Verizon franchise agreement renewal proposal from Cohen Law Group not to exceed $9,450. And accept the 2024 camp fees. And finally, approve a contract for professional services for sound and acoustic analysis by Dr. Carr Everback for a price not to exceed $5,000. And I would assume that should say for the data center. Any questions? Board members?
I have none.
Not seeing any? Could I have a motion?
Quick question.
You have a question?
For Catherine. The Verizon fee, is that like a fee that people that are on Verizon within the township get charged?
Mm-hmm.
No, the township has a franchise agreement with both Verizon and Comcast, and it comes up for renewal every so many years.
Mm-hmm.
So we typically participate as a consortium with other Chester County municipalities. We have a better negotiating position and it lowers the cost. Overall, in Cohen Law Group, this is their specialty. This is basically all they do. So this is just for us to sign off to be part of the Verizon franchise agreement renewal process.
Sure. Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda for the February 14th, 2024 meeting as read.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. At this point, at 9:25, the meeting is adjourned.